If you have been to Europe or even East Asia, you would see so many beautiful historical sites that you wouldn't have time to visit them all. But where are they in India? I mean, sure, there is the Taj Mahal, the Ajanta and Ellora caves, the forts in Rajasthan, the normal stuff. But that's boring. We have all been there or have plans of going there. So today, I'm going to highlight some historical places that you've never heard of. And they show an aspect of Indian history that you're not even aware of. Most people visit Bihar only to visit maybe Bodh Gaya and other earliest Buddhist sites. But most people don't know is that Bihar has the oldest still standing Hindu temple. It is the Mundeshwari Devi temple. It is barely 100 kilometers from Banaras and it is believed to be 1900 years old according to ASI. In here you can see the earliest stone built architecture of Hindu temples and feel the history when you visit it. Now this is probably not the oldest ever temple, but older temples have either been destroyed or they were made of wood and rotted away to time. The only reason why this has survived is because it has been renovated a couple of times. Once around 6th and 7th century, once in 18th and 19th century. It is dedicated to Durga, but it is also believed that there was an earlier temple close by to it, dedicated to Shiva, with this four-headed Shivling. It is mentioned in Skanda Purana. However, if you want to visit a place that is even older, you will have to head to Madhya Pradesh. We've all heard of the Sachi Stupa. It was constructed by the Mauryas, expanded by the Shunga dynasty. It gets a lot of visitors. But what most people don't know is that surrounding it in 10 to 12 kilometer radius are multiple other stupa complexes. One of them is bigger and doesn't get as many visitors. It is the Satdhara Stupa and it is only 10 kilometers away from Sachi Stupa. So both can be visited on the same day. But be warned, there's a fair hike going up to this place. And until recently, when some new roads had been built and ASI had done all of their work on it, the hike was even longer. When Alexander Cunningham rediscovered it in 1854, they sat atop hills that formed perpendicular cliffs. Even back in the Mauryan period when they were built, they were seen to be off the beaten path, a place where the monks went to be away from the crowds of Sanchi. There are over 40 stupas, 14 viharas and 2 aspidal temples. There are several inscriptions and hand-carved statues dating back to the Mauryan and Shunga period. It had been abandoned by the time of the Gupta Empire and it had not been completely accessible to the public until the year 2000. But if you want to go even further back in time, I got you with Dholavira is an Indus Valley site placed on an island in the middle of Run of Kutch. The pathway to it goes through the road to heaven in Kutch. That looks like this in winter and this during monsoon. Dholavira was one of the largest and the last abandoned sites in the Indus Valley. It still had people living in it by the 15th century BC, by which point Vedas had been composed, more than likely, and the Vedic age and the second urbanization had started in Punjab and Haryana region. Meaning this site survived the fall of Indus Valley and survived all the way until Iron Age sites started popping up around it. And if that doesn't interest you somehow, the road leading up to it is one of the most beautiful in the entire world. But in terms of pure history value, this is not the most impressive site. For that, we'll have to head to Haryana for Rakhigarhi has recently opened up to tourists again after their most recent excavations by ASI. And now we can actually see how impressive the site is. Recent archaeological discoveries prove that it is actually much larger than we previously thought it was. Previously, it was believed to be the third largest Indus Valley site, but now it has become the largest Indus Valley site. This site even survived all three major phases of the Indus Valley, which is news because we thought that it had only survived the mature phase, which had lasted in between 2600 BC to 1900 BC. But recent discoveries push back the date of its building to 3000 BC, and they also reveal that despite it being on the banks of Saraswati river, it had survived until after the river had dried up. But these sites would only really attract archaeological history nerds like me and you. But if you want some place to take your families to take some photos with, I got you with if you know a little bit about Tamil history, you would know about Brihadeshwara temple, one of the living temples from Chola era from 1000 years ago. Well, this is one of those temples and it doesn't have nearly as many visitors. And I mean, just look at it. Come on, man. It's absolutely worth visiting just for this. But if you're still not convinced somehow, there is magic here. The stairs leading up to the inner sanctum of this temple play music with each step you take. Each step plays one of the first 7 notes of the Indian classical musical scale. Just listen to this. This still has some crowd and some notoriety. There is one temple that is even more obscure. Built in 1213 CE by Ganpati Deva of the Kakatiya dynasty, this Shiva temple has something that even confounds modern day engineers. You see, this place is a place that experiences a lot of earthquakes, and to tackle this problem, they made it earthquake proof by having sandbox foundations and floating bricks. Needless to say, if you are into civil engineering or even architecture, you should visit it. Even if you're not, just look at this. Now, it is hard to get to. It is 200 kilometers northeast of Hyderabad, but if you want to beat the crowd, you have to make trips like this. And it will make your time worth it because it has multiple pristine temples around it and the nature around it is immaculate. But I got you. You want to see even more things when you visit a place so far out of the way of anywhere big. For that, you have to go here. This is a historical town. It's not just a temple complex or a fort complex. The entire town is preserved in history. I've seen up to 5-day-long itineraries of this place, which means you can spend a whole week here. That's because it was a significant historical spot. It borders Bundelkhand and the Malwa Plateau. So between 11th and 18th century, it was one of the most important trading posts in the entire region, leading to it changing hands multiple times. What that means is that here you will see Rajput architecture, Indo-Islamic architecture, Maratha architecture, and Mughal architecture. There will be temples, historic mosques, forts, lakes, lake forts, and historic shops that sell handloom clothes made of Indian cotton and silk. Do pick up a sari for yourself if you do decide to visit. It is also pretty close to Khajuraho, so if that interests you, make a trip to there from here. But this place is still inhabited. People live here. You want a place that has been abandoned to time and hence preserved It's history. Then I got you with this is an entire preserved medieval city just a few kilometers away from Vadodara. Settled at first by Rajputs in 13th century, it thrived under them for 2 centuries afterwards, before it got attacked by the Gujarat Sultanate, who ruled it for another 130 years before it got abandoned by them because of an attack by Mughals. And the Mughals, for their part, didn't occupy it. So for 500 years, no one has been living here. No one has rebuilt it and no one has broken it down. Meaning, a city from 500 years ago still remains intact for you to see. This is the closest you can get to time traveling back to pre-Mughal India. Now, atop this hill that overlooks this entire park is the Kalka Devi temple, which does have a lot of visitors. But very few people turn around and visit the 800-year-old archaeological site right underneath it. Perfect for history nerds to find an underrated place to visit in India, while also taking their family to the temple. But okay, all these are close to places you could reasonably visit. What about something that is truly off the beaten path? Imagine this. You're trekking through the forests of one of the least visited states of India, and you see this. What even is this? Is probably what is going through your head. Well, would you believe me when I say that this is a cave dedicated to Shiva, made in the 7th century AD? Yes, this is Shiva. This is Parvati. This is called Bhairav. And well, this, you can guess it's Ganesh. But that's not all. It's surrounded by mountains and waterfalls of incredible beauty. And because of it being so far away from any major spots, it had kind of fallen to disrepair for some time. It only became a UNESCO heritage site in 2022. According to legend, there were supposed to be less than 1 crore sculptures here, which I am skeptical about, but there's certainly a lot more sculptures here than have been excavated. The Shiv Bhakts of Tripura have somewhat kept this place alive, as every year a big fair known as Ashokashtami Mela is held in the month of April, which is visited by thousands of pilgrims. But it also sees some elevated traffic on Mondays, which is supposed to be the day of Shiva. There really isn't a lot more information about it out there. More needs to be excavated and researched about. More is yet to come, and that is very cool. This was one site I did not know about before starting the research for this video. See, I'm learning with you guys. And conversely, the next one is the reason why I wanted to make this video in the first place. Did you know that at one point there was another religion in India outside of Hinduism, Buddhism, Jainism and Sikhism? And this religion came about around at the same time as Buddha and Mahavira. It was called the Ajivika, which by the time of the Gupta Empire had largely been wiped out. And the only sources we have on them are Buddhist and Jain sources that are very critical about them. Except for one source, and that is the Barabar cave. These caves are places that the Emperor Ashoka had constructed for the Ajivikas as a place of pilgrimage and rest, as his father himself was an Ajivika. This shrine predated his conversion to Buddhism and his subsequent persecution of non-Vedic and non-Buddhist minorities. But its age is not where the wonders end. Inside, it is made of perfect mirror finish smooth stones, meaning you can see your own reflection on these stones That's how polished smooth the stones are. And they have zero imperfections, even 2300 years later. The polished surface of these caves create an echo sound that is incredibly unique. And it is the oldest hand carved out cave dedicated to any religion in India that we know of. It is only 24 kilometers from Gaya, which people visit all the time. So it is probably the most accessible place in this list. Still, it is very underrated and undervisited. So these were some of the most underrated places in India. Pick whatever's closest to you or interests you and plan a trip. Experience the diversity and glory of ancient India through sites that most people don't talk about. And don't forget to thank the messenger, which is me, by liking and subscribing. See you next time.